Alright guys, how's it going? And welcome back to another episode of our Satisfactory Many Manifolds series. In the last episode we covered our first variation of the Overflow Manifold, which was the Split Output Overflow Manifold. That manifold is designed to make handling recipes where the output quantity of a production line is higher than the input quantity per minute. It was also a more compact, cheaper to build, and more scalable system when compared to the original Overflow Method video. I also said that the original Overflow Manifold was great for when the output quantities either matched or was less than the input quantity. And while it is, when looking at recipes that have lower output quantities than input quantities, like iron plates for example, there is almost always a better way to do things more efficiently. So what Overflow Manifold system design is better suited to items such as iron plates? Well, we're about to find out. Before we get going though, let's just have a quick recap of what the Split Output Overflow Manifold is and how it works. The input is passed along a central spine of splitters, and both available outputs of each splitter is occupied by a constructor, and in turn, there's a merger at the output of each constructor too. As the screw recipe stated, it took 3 constructors to fully saturate a Mark II conveyor belt, but that only dealt with a quarter of the input belt resource. So this basically means that the production line is currently broken into 4 groups of 3 constructors. And as you can see, this is how I have the 4 groups laid out. So you may be thinking, what's wrong with the default overflow manifold when making iron plates? Well, for one thing, to fill a conveyor belt to capacity, you'll need to have multiple lines where the outputs are merged together to do this. To understand this even more, let's use the same restrictions as the last episode where the highest tier conveyor belt is a Mark II conveyor, and we'll work from there. So looking at the iron plate recipe, it requires 30 iron ingots per minute, which will produce 20 iron plates per minute. So to fully utilize a 120 ingot per minute belt, we'll need 4 constructors, however that will only yield us 80 iron plates per minute. We could touch on using the default overflow manifold system and then merging the outputs together, but that still takes up more space, and in this case we wouldn't be fully utilizing all of the merger capacity as compared to last time where we're not utilizing the full capacities of the splitters. So what happens if we take something like the Split Output Overflow Manifold system and turn it on its head? What if we turn it into a Merged Output Overflow Manifold instead? So running with that theory, if we have 2 120 ingot per minute lines and then run them through 8 constructors, since we're using 2 input lines, that would automatically yield us 160 iron plates per minute. Yes, that's more than what we need to fully saturate a Mark II conveyor line, but the extra 40 plates per minute can be funneled off into a storage container that we can use to build other plant machinery around the factory. But does this answer the scalability question? Well, I think it does, because as you unlock higher tier conveyors and miners, you'll simply need to extend the length of the line to process your input requirements, and with any excess drawn off for use in other places in the factory. Or you could even send the excess to your awesome sink to help generate some tokens passively. So what will a Merged Output Overflow Manifold look like? Well, after building it, it'll look like this. As you can see, we have our 2 lines of iron ingots entering from both outside edges of the production line, with our mergers meeting in the middle of the production line. And this is basically just a complete mirror of the Split Output Overflow Manifold. Since the total output required to saturate a Mark II belt doesn't require that all of the constructors' outputs are merged together, we have to group them into our output group and our overflow group. Group 1 is the 6 constructors that we need to be able to saturate a Mark II conveyor belt, and Group 2 is merging whatever's left from the processing of the 2 iron ingot lines and is funneled out of the whole production line separately for use that can either be drawn off into a storage container for making new buildings and machines in other parts of the factory, or it can be fed into an awesome sink that will help generate tokens passively so that you can unlock items in the awesome shop once you've built up enough tokens. And that brings us to the end of yet another video. I hope this has been educational, inspiring, helpful in any way, shape or form. If it has, please leave a like and consider subscribing, and make sure if you do subscribe that you hit the bell notification icon so that way you're alerted to the next video in this series or any other content that I put out. And with all that said, I hope you've had a good new year, and I'll see you in the next one.